Thank you, Jennifer James. Tim, Darlene, appreciate that testimony. Thank you, choir. Well, church, how was Christmas? Get some good food? We had at my dad's house, and every year is different. Every year there's something that distinguishes that year from all the others. We had a house full this year, which was nice at my dad's house. The oven cooled off all the time we were there. There's always good eating going on. But on Christmas Day, the stovetop was hot, and everybody was in there doing their thing. And one of my sisters, I don't know how she did this, but she spilled all the pepper on top of the stovetop. All it was hot. Okay? After that, I don't know if you've been through that before or not, but I can testify to you that it will clean the house out really quick. All right? Somebody said that's the only Christmas I've ever been where I was pepper sprayed. So that will distinguish this year for us. I hope you had a good time. But we've always looked forward to getting back and worshiping with you and getting started with the new year. It's our tradition here on the first Sunday of each year to have what I call a refrigerator door bulletin. And hopefully you've got that in your hand. You can turn that over and get ready, get your Bible ready. And the point of this is for you to fill this outline yet over the next few minutes, take it home, and put it on your refrigerator door. Why my refrigerator door, you may ask? Well, I don't know about you, but that's the one place that I know everybody in the house is going to go to. All right? That's one place that you can guarantee in my house that you're going to see it, is on the refrigerator door. You may have another place in your house. If you do, that's fine. Put it there. In 2017, going back a couple of years, if you still got this up, some of you may, the refrigerator door outline was to read, believe, and obey the Bible, RBO the Bible. And we still see some promotion for that in the church from time to time. Keep doing that. Now, the refrigerator door outline doesn't mean that you just do that for the year and stop, all right? It's just a reminder. So keep doing that. Last year, on the first Sunday of 2018, we talked about prayer. And I asked you a question. I said, what is your prayer place? Who is your prayer partner? And what is your prayer passion? You may still have that up. Leave it up. Okay? Don't take it down. Keep doing that. But we've got a new one today. And our text is in Matthew. We've been going through the book of Matthew now for a couple of years. We're in Matthew 22. If you want to open your Bible, please, and join me. Matthew 22:15. And God willing, we'll just continue to go right through the book of Matthew. Maybe by the end of this year we'll be finished. We've been to Matthew over 100 times now. There's a lot there. And today, in Matthew 22:15, it raises the question, what belongs to God? What things belong to God? What should we give to God? Let's look at this text together. Matthew 22:15 says this, that the Pharisees went out and took counsel about how they could trap him, Jesus, in his words. They sent their disciples with the Herodians to him, saying, Teacher, we know that you're a man of truth. We know that you teach the way of God with truth. We know that you don't show favoritism. And we know that you don't just judge by appearances. What do you think? Now let me just stop there. When somebody comes up to you and says that many good things about you all at one time, you better watch out, because something is fixing to happen. They are flattering him, there's no doubt about that, but ironically, everything they say is true. It's not really flattering, they're just saying true things about him. They don't believe it, though. They think of it as flattering. But let's look at the question that they ask him. What do you think? Is it right to pay the tax to Caesar or not? Verse 17. Now, they think that what they've done is ask Jesus a question that has put him on the horns of the dilemma. That no matter how he answers this question, and by the way, they've kind of helped him out there a little bit. They've given him the two options, pay the tax or not. They're giving him the yes or no question. And they think that no matter which one he chooses, that he is going to say something that will harm him publicly. This is all happening in the temple courts. It's happening probably on Tuesday of the week that he will be crucified on Friday morning. And so things are really coming to a head here. The conflict between him and the religious leaders is at a boiling point. And they keep coming and trying to entrap him. That's what's happening here. And so here's what they think. They think that if Jesus says, yes, it's right to pay taxes to Caesar, that he will lose all of his popularity with the people. Because at this moment in Israel, Rome is an oppressor. They have moved in and taken over the country. They are occupying Israel. And there are very few Israelites who agree with that. They want the Romans out. They want their country back. And the idea of paying taxes to Caesar, to Rome, is just insult added to injury. Because not only have these people come in and taken over our country, but we're paying them to do it. So you could get an Israelite pretty fired up talking about paying taxes to Caesar at this point. But if Jesus says, no, it's not right to pay taxes to Caesar, that would be popular among the people, but since he's making that statement publicly, they could use that as a charge against him with the Romans. Now, the thing about the Romans were they knew how to occupy a country. Israel wasn't the first time that they had done this. They were occupying countries all around the Mediterranean world. They were the 800-pound gorilla. They were the big guys. They were the ones who ran the show at this point. And they didn't put up with any, as my grandfather used to say, they didn't put up with any guff. Now, I'm not even sure what the word guff means. Maybe I shouldn't use it. But I know from the context what it means. Because when he told me he wasn't going to put up with any guff, I knew what that means. And the Romans didn't put up with any guff from anybody. And Jesus knows, and they know, that if he says publicly that it's wrong to pay taxes, that he will put himself in a very difficult and dangerous position with the Romans. You can see the smiles on their faces as they ask this question, thinking, you're not going to get out of this one, Jesus. So let's see what he does. In verse 18, Matthew tells us that Jesus, knowing their wickedness, says to them, you hypocrites, why are you testing me? Bring me the coin. Show me the coin for the tax. And so they brought him a denarius. A denarius was a coin minted in the first century that was worth about 1 day's wage for a day worker. Today, what would that be worth? I don't know, $40, $80, depends on what you make, right? Something like that. So it had some value to it. It wasn't like a penny or a nickel. It had some value to it, but it wasn't great value. So they bring this denarius to him, to Jesus, and he asks, whose image and inscription is on the coin? And they said, well, Caesar's. Tiberius Caesar's image would be on this coin. When a new ruler came into power in the ancient Near Eastern world, they would mint their own coinage. And when they minted that coin, they would put their own picture on it. That was part of their way of taking control of the situation in this particular case, the economic situation. The coinage, the monetary system belonged to them. They printed it and passed it out. And so Jesus asked them, whose image and whose inscription is on this coin? By the way, he uses the word image. Some of you may have a light bulb go out when you hear the word image. Image, we are made in God's image. And some people think that Jesus is using this word on purpose here as he asks this question. Whose image and whose inscription is on this coin? They said, well, Caesar's. And then Jesus makes this famous statement here in verse 21. He says, well then, give the things of Caesar to Caesar, and the things of God to God. And when they heard this, they were amazed, and they went out and they left him. They had no recourse, no retort. They had nothing else to say. Once again, this isn't the first time Jesus has silenced his enemies, and they don't know what to do. They're all amazed that he keeps doing this. And he gives an answer that is so self-evidently correct, so compelling in its logic, that they can't use it against him the way that they thought they were going to be able to do. But let's look at his statement for just a moment, because this is one of Jesus' most famous sayings right here. The reason that it's famous is because he lays out a principle that was new for God's people. Up until this point, God's people had been a theocracy. The people of Israel and the nation of Israel were chosen by God, and that people, the Jews, that nation, Israel, was used by God to spread the truth about Him to the rest of the world. Things are changing, and Jesus has already been telling them this, that the kingdom is going to be taken away from them and given to the people who will produce its fruit. He's not saying that all those Old Testament promises made to Israel will not be fulfilled. They will. But there's a change coming in the way the kingdom is going to operate. And it happened 2,000 years ago, and it's still with us. The church now is the proper representative, God's chosen representative of the gospel, not just in one nation, but in all nations around the world. And so because of this, because Christians now represent God in all nations, we have a different relationship with the government than the Jew had with the government before Jesus came. We don't live in theocracies anymore. And so Jesus is laying out a principle that's important. He's saying, from now on, believers are going to minister in all kinds of nations, in all of the nations. And because of that, there will need to be a separation between the church and the state. That doesn't mean that they can't work together, but they must be distinguished. The state cannot tell the church what to do, and the church cannot do what the state has been ordained by God to do. But let me stop. I could talk a lot about that. That's a very important subject. But I want you to notice something about this text this morning, because we have just jumped right over the elephant in the room by going to that subject, which is typical of the way that this text is handled. And I admit that what we were about to talk about is incredibly important. We've spent hours and hours talking about it here, both on Sunday mornings, especially on Sunday evenings. But we've just missed something very important in this text, because there's a more fundamental question that's asked. Notice what Jesus says. He says, give the things of Caesar to Caesar. Now, the discussion right then at that very moment is about money. They're asking, who should we give our money to? Should we give money to Caesar? And he tells them, well, Caesar printed the money, and he gave it to you, and you're using it. It's his money. So if it's his, then you give him what he asks for. That's only right. But then Jesus also says this, and give the things of God to God. You know, the obvious question that is raised by this text is this: what are the things of God? What are the things of God? Now, Jesus doesn't say on this particular occasion what those things are. He just says the things that belong to God, you need to give to God. But it's very easy for us to scan the text of the Bible and answer the question from Jesus' ministry and from the Bible generally. There are things that we're told over and over again in Scripture that belong to God, the things that we are to give to God. Jesus would not have had to tell those Jews standing there listening to him that day what the things of God were. They knew what those things were. They understood that they would give money to Caesar, and they also gave money to God. They gave a temple tax to keep the temple up. They were taught to tithe, as Tim and Darlene so eloquently talked about just a moment ago. I can't add anything to that. They were taught to tithe. Now, when you start talking about tithing, though, it raises questions. But let's start filling in the outline. All right? What should we give to God? What should we give to God? First of all, the best of our treasure. The best of our treasure. And I love the fact that in their testimony they talk about giving cheerfully. Giving cheerfully. Darlene talked about having to give first instead of waiting until the end of the month to find out what was left at the end of the week or whatever period of time happened to be. There are a lot of people who give to the church, but they give their leftovers. They wait to see what they can give, and then they give God what is left over. But the Bible teaches about giving God what's called the first fruits. There's not a whole lot of faith in giving God what's left over. I know I can do without that. I've proved it. I've already paid all my bills and made sure that I have enough money to do all the things that I want to do. Here's what's left. I can give that to God. There's no faith in that. It's not a step of faith. A step of faith is to say, God has asked me to give X amount, and I'm going to give it before I do anything else because He's more important than anything else in my life. In fact, He's the one that gives me the ability to even give Him. If He weren't blessing me with life and job and all the things that I have, I wouldn't be able to give him anything in the first place. So it's an act of faith to say, I'll give him the first fruits of what I get. So the first thing on our outline is treasure. Let me add the next thing in before we stop and talk a little bit more about it. The next thing is time. These two things really, in many ways, define us as people. You find out where a person's time and treasure goes, and you're going to know a lot about it. Look at their calendar, look at the checkbook. Now, for time, in the Old Testament, the saint was told, you need to give God one day a week, where everything else is just set aside and you focus on Him. In the New Testament, that's the Lord's Day. It's the first day. And so it's like the first fruits of our treasure. We think of Sunday as the first day of the week, and we start the week out by focusing on God. Then we go do the other things that we need to do, the things that He has blessed us to be able to do. And so that was, in the Old Testament, it's called the Sabbath. We call it the Lord's Day. 1 out of 7. It's His. We give it to Him. Now, here's the question that comes from a lot of New Testament believers. Well, Richard, that's the Old Testament. What you're talking about is the Old Testament. And I'm a New Testament believer, and I am not under the law. And we even sing about that. You can find it in our hymn. Not under the law. Hallelujah. Well, let me explain a couple of things to you. First of all, what it means in the Bible, and it says that in the Bible, not just the hymn. When it says in the Bible that we are not under law, first of all, it means that we're not under the curse of the law. Because the law would work like this. Those who do these things will live by them, and those who don't do them will die. That was the whole thing with the law in the Old Testament. But when we come to the New Testament, Jesus Christ goes to the cross, He is nailed to the cross, and He becomes the punishment for our sin. All the law that we have broken, all of our law breaking is put on Him, and He takes that curse from us and puts it on Himself. So we are no longer under the curse of the law. But let me explain something else to you, too. People talk about the Ten Commandments as well. I don't have to follow the Ten Commandments. I'm a New Testament Christian. Oh, really? Tell your wife that you can go out and commit adultery and everything's all right. Let me do it. Tell your boss that you can steal from him and that's okay. You're a Christian. I'm not under the law anymore. And let's see how that works out. Now, being under law doesn't mean that we don't still pursue holy lives. And what the Ten Commandments do is they explain to us what a holy life looks like. But the Ten Commandments, another reason that we're not under the law is that we're not limited by the law. See, the Old Testament saint could do what Tim was talking about, be very legalistic. Well, I paid my tithe. I'm good. I don't have to worry about God for another 7 days or whatever period of time like that. Jesus made it clear, Lord, that's not the way that works. Let me go back to marriage and explain it this way. When you got married, I hope that you love your wife so much. You love your husband so much. You want to pour your heart out, give your body, your mind, your soul, everything. Share everything with them. Now, you could, in your marriage, avoid committing adultery and say, I'm good. I kept the law. You don't have to sleep with your wife. You don't have to make love to her. You don't have to do anything for her. All you have to do is just not sleep with anybody else. And in God's eyes, you've got a good marriage. Is that what we're looking for? Absolutely not. We're not under the law like that anymore. We're not limited by what the law says. Jesus has set us free to give everything to Christ. So we talk about tithing, and Karen and I think about tithing also, and have a similar experience as Tim and Darlene's. But tithing to us is just a starting point. We're looking for what God wants us to do beyond the tithe, the offering, we would call it. What does God want us to do? Yeah, we know He wants us to tithe. We don't have to ask about that. That's done. That question was answered long, long ago in our household. So there's no question about how that's done, when it's done, and who it goes to. The question then becomes prayerfully, what else do you want us to do, God? What else do you want us to do? And that's not just with money, it's with time, also with our time and our treasure. But let's go on. There's a couple of other things here. The things of God include the best of our treasure, the best of our time, and our talents. Talents. I don't know what it is that you love. Well, that's not true. I know what it is that a lot of you love to do. And I know what it is that a lot of you can do. And there are many of you out there that can do some things really, really well. And I'm always impressed when I watch you do those things. And I love to watch how you love doing those things, what it does for you. We need to remember that those talents were not given to us accidentally by our parents. Those talents were given to us by God. He said, I want this individual to have the gift of music. I want this individual to have the gift of teaching. And on I could go. These are not talents that were just accidentally given to us, that we do whatever we want to with them. Our talents are given to us to bless the church with. That's where they are supposed to be spent. And there's no arrogance in being good at something in the church, because we didn't earn it. God gave it to us.
Amen.
If you can do something good, revel in it, but don't get a big head. Because God gave it to you. It's a gift. And the gift isn't even just to you. The gift was given to you to share with everyone else. So, what should we give to God? The best of our treasure, the best of our time, our talents. I couldn't help myself. I had to use those T words. I thought that was good. But Jesus also said something else that kind of sums up the whole thing. Most of all, we should give God our heart. Our heart. And that's what Tim's talking about when he said cheerful giving. You know, you can give money to God and still not be giving Him your heart. You can give Him time and talent and still not be giving Him your heart. But that's not what He wants. He wants our heart. When we give our heart to God, the time, the talent, the treasure is easy to give to Him. The heart should go first. Jesus said that we should store up for ourselves treasures on earth where moth and rust destroy and thieves break in and steal. That we should store up for ourselves treasures where? Heaven, where moth and rust don't destroy, where thieves don't break in and steal. And He said, where your treasure is, what? That's where your heart's going. That's where your heart's going. If your time and your treasure and your talent is here in the Lord's work, then your heart will be here. And we're talking about doing some things this year that are going to require some heart. There come times in a church's life that are extraordinary, and they require extra effort. And we're facing one of those right now. You need to know, if you don't already, that this church, Grace Baptist Church, began in the 1950s. In the 1950s, First Baptist Church downtown took out a tent they called Old Glory, and they took it into one of the lower income parts of town, into an area where they felt like people would never go downtown to First Baptist Church. And they wanted to reach them with the gospel. They stood up Old Glory, and they had one of the old tent revivals. Anybody remember those? They had an old tent revival that summer, and 35 people got saved and baptized. Now, they could have taken their tent home and said, hallelujah, that was a great revival, but let's keep going, but they didn't. Somebody had some vision, and they took those 35 people, and they started a church. And church, here we are today. That is our history, our local history. You see, that group of people continued to meet together. And one of them said, here's a place we can meet. And then another one said, well, we've got some money. Let's buy this other place and let's meet over here because we got more people now. And Grace Baptist Church kind of moved around. Grace moved around Camden for a while. But in the middle 1960s, about 1965, somebody had some vision and a group of people had some heart. And they bought the property that you and I are on today. And they built that part of the property over there, and the part that we call Fellowship Hall was a sanctuary, and they used to worship the Lord down the hall in what we call Fellowship Hall. And then in the 1980s, they had a vision. Somebody had some heart and a vision, and they said, we need more space to teach people the Bible. And so they built this educational space back in the 1980s. In the 1980s, it needs to be remodeled. Then in the 1990s, the group had some heart. And there was nothing here where I'm standing but gravel. People parked their cars. But they had some heart. Go back one, Jacob. These people had some heart. And they had a vision. Now, I could show you pictures of people that had a heart and a vision back in the 1960s. And the ones before that. But I'm just picking them out because we're sitting in the sanctuary today because a group of people love the Lord, that have a heart, and where their heart went, their time, their treasure, and their talent went. And we're benefiting from it this very moment. We're seeing it. Now, as I said to you, there comes a time in the life of the church when each generation is challenged to put their heart into what's going on. And we're reaching one of those moments right now. If you were in Sunday school this morning, you heard what I had to say. I'm not going to say it again. Next Sunday night, you come and hear the details of what we want to do next, what we believe God's calling us to do. But that's got to be affirmed by the church family. You see, we're Baptists. We believe in congregational politics. There's no one person or some small group of people here at Grace Baptist Church that make all the decisions about how the money is spent and the staff is hired and fired and all those kinds of things. We are a church family. We do these things together. That's what makes us Baptists. So you need to be on your knees. You need to be praying. You need to be informed. You need to be here next Sunday night and find out what it is we're talking about, how much it's going to cost. And then you need to be on your knees about that next Sunday night when we get together and vote yes or no about this. Where's our heart? Where's our heart? Now, I'm not saying that our heart isn't in the gospel just because we vote yes on one particular project. All right? Don't get me wrong. We need to prayerfully and carefully consider this project. And if as a church family we believe it's God's will, then we should put our heart into it all the way and go for it. But let me back up just a little bit. What things belong to God? The first thing that belongs to God is our very life, our soul, our spirit. Everyone in this room breathing right now. And somebody's doing some breathing. That is the breath of God. Your life belongs to God. And He's given it to you, and He's given it to me, and given us the choice to give it back to Him. We call that getting saved. It means that we realize that we've been a rebel, that we've disobeyed God, we've broken some of those 10 commandments, maybe all of them, I don't know. And we realize that unless we get right with God, that means that we're headed to heaven for eternity. But that God doesn't want us to spend eternity in hell. He made hell for Satan and his demons, not for us. He made heaven for us, and that's where He wants us to be. But we have to reach out to Him. He has reached out to us, and now we've got to reach back and take that hand of salvation. Would you bow your head with me?